This is the testing and tracking session. It's been such an incredible week, just following some of the world's top journalists who've shared their tips and their career lessons with us all. And now we're almost at the tail end of this year's program, but not before we hear from some of the journalists who've used tech tools to investigate some incredible stories. First, just a bit of housekeeping. If you need translation for this session, please click on the globe icon at the far right of your Zoom application and choose your language of preference. Otherwise, welcome to all of you. And a friendly reminder, if you just look at the chat box, is that this is a respectful and safe community space. And so there's a code of conduct there that you can click on in case you need to read on the rules of this engagement. My name is Asha Mwilu. I'm an investigative journalist based in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm the founder of Debunk Media, which is a digital-based media company that uses data and multimedia storytelling to help audiences make sense of the world. I'm very excited about this evening's panel because the speakers are just invaluable. We all know how tech tools are shaping today's investigative reporting. Our speakers joining us have followed the journey of used or donated goods. They have used small GPS and GSM tracking tags to reveal unethical export prices and have used new testing techniques to expose environmental abuse. Allow me to introduce them. We have Abu Siddiq, who is a Bangladesh-based journalist specializing in the coverage of environmental issues. Prior to going independent, Abu worked for the Daily Sun, Dhaka Tribute, and the Business Standard. He now focuses on reporting on climate change, biodiversity, water, wildlife, agriculture, and other environmental issues. Martin Boudot is a French investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker based in Paris, France. He is the host and producer of Green Warriors, which is a series of scientific investigations on environmental issues broadcast on France 5, Al Jazeera, and Amazon Prime Video. In 2015, Martin won the Best Investigative Documentary at Dig Festival, the 2017 European Current Affairs Program at the Prix Europa, and he won the 2019 Rory Peck Award in the Impact category. And then we have Mina Knuskalan, who works with the investigative team MOT at the Finnish broadcasting company, Yle. Knuskalan's coverage of money laundering, Bangladesh garment factories, and corruption have earned her several awards, among others, the Journalist of the Year of 2015. And later, last year actually, she investigated the supply chain of used clothes with GPS trackers. Jessica Stoltzman is a foreign news reporter, also with Finland's National Public Broadcasting Company. Inspired by a similar investigation by the Swedish site Breakit, she used GPS trackers to follow clothing supply chains, investigating what happens to clothes that are bought online and returned. Incredible stories. I've watched some of them, and I'll tell you, if you can, just get a link. I hope that the speakers can share links to their stories as we listen to them and follow those incredible stories. But look at us, we have an access to them and access to information on how they investigated this story. I want to introduce our first panelist, who is Mina Knuskalan. Mina, please take the stage and show us how you used the trackers, and possibly at some point, maybe you can tell us some of the stories that we can investigate using the same techniques. Mina?
Thank you very much. It's a big honor, great honor to be here. This is a great conference, and it would be lovely to see you all, but let's do this virtually. Can you see, Asha, the presentation? Okay.
Perfect.
So we have two different investigations that we did with my colleague Jessica, using the same small GPS trackers, but with different research approach. So I think you can learn from these two different investigations. The journey our used clothes make from the charity bin to the other side of the world, that was my issue. And Jessica, what happens to the clothes you buy online and return. So we're talking about the lessons learned, the mistakes we made. We always learn from mistakes, right? And we are always making mistakes, even if Asha is saying that we are so incredible, but that's a good way of learning by mistakes. And we want to inspire you to use different investigation methods. It's a bit like thinking out of the box. And trackers are also a very cool way of storytelling. So we followed the journey of used clothes and investigated the global billion-euro business of used clothes, hiding small trackers in garments. And we followed their trip during 1 year from Finland to Europe, Africa, and Middle East. You have probably seen these containers in your countries. Well, they are charity organizations, private companies, or big fashion chains that collect secondhand clothes. And we put our old sweaters in there, and then we go away with good conscience, and maybe we go back to the shop and buy some more. But do we really know the final destination of these clothes and what happens to them? And this is a big environmental problem, because we are talking about a huge mountain of textile waste. Only in Finland, which is a small country, we have over 70 million kilos we throw away textile, and that's about 800 big swimming pools just to make each year. So these were the questions we had before the investigation. How much of these clothes are recycled? How much are sold and exported? Where are they exported? What happens to ragged clothes? And are we dumping our waste problems to poorer countries? Very soon I found out, and this was a big surprise for me, that it is such a secretive business. The experts don't know the final destination. The charities themselves don't know the exact final destination. And we didn't get interviews from the biggest charities. UFF is the biggest in Finland. We didn't get any filming permissions in the European sorting plants either. So it's secretive. Why? Why is the business around my t-shirt so secretive? Okay, so the collectors claim that there's no export of dirty or clothes in bad shape. If FIDA is the second biggest charity in Finland, they claimed they don't export to Africa. So these are some of the claims that we had. So, okay, it's such a secretive business. And one of my colleagues got a great idea. Let's use trackers. Sounds easy, right? But then we started to think, what do we need? We need trackers that are small enough. We need durable battery, because we didn't know, I supposed it was a long journey, but we weren't sure. We wanted them to be light so we could hide them in clothes. And we wanted to have a global coverage, because I had an idea that they would make long journeys. So these were the challenges we had, and to find a suitable tracker was not easy. The first thing I did was look at other projects, colleagues using trackers. I didn't find any stories about clothes, so we really needed small and light ones. Then I saw a project, some colleagues who made projects on plastic waste, and they used this same company's tracker. This is a Finnish company. I don't get commission for this, but this happens. That's something I found, and we thought that they could work. So the questions we had when we started the project: where can we hide the trackers? We didn't want them to be found in the sorting plants in Finland, because we knew that some of the clothes would go to sorting plants here and maybe then to Europe. And we wanted to sort of follow the journey as long as possible. And what if somebody buys the garment? Because that happens with better garments. We didn't want to spy on anybody. We didn't want to shock people. And how long would the battery last? That was our biggest concern. This is how it looks like. You have an application on the mobile phone, and this is the green sweater we started to follow from Finland. Then it went to Lithuania. This is the journey my husband's old jeans made from Helsinki with a boat to Estonia, and from there through Kiel Canal to Hamburg to Soex. So 3 of the trackers went outside Europe, 1 to Pakistan, 1 to Nigeria, and 1 to Kenya. And here you can see the scope. This is sort of more or less where they are. And then, of course, in this project, as in so many investigative projects, Excel is a very, very good tool. This application doesn't do the Excel automatically. I did this by hand. So the final destination of 4 of the garments, and this is the trip that they took: Germany, 1 month, Kenya took 5 months, Nigeria 6 months, and then Pakistan. This was our biggest surprise, because that silver-colored jacket seemed to have died, or the tracker seemed to have died in Lithuania in a harbor. And we sort of thought, okay, we are not going to know what happens with that one. And then 1 year later, we suddenly get a signal from Pakistan. So this was a really big surprise for us. 2 others, of course, we had problems. 1 of the trackers died in a Finnish harbor in Helsinki. We don't know why and what happened. We suppose it goes abroad because it's in harbor, but we never got to know why the tracker died. Then the thing happened that we sort of were a bit wary about. And as you see on the right-hand side, you see the movements of the tracker. And this is a railway station, and this is it's near a shopping mall. So our theory is that somebody robbed this winter jacket from a shop, from the bin of where we put the jacket. And this suddenly appeared in Latvia, in the Baltic countries, and then we turned it off. You can do that because we didn't want to follow a person. It seems the route was so strange. We went also to Africa. We went to Mozambique to interview people there, and we went to a big second-hand market and saw the problems that this causes in many African countries. The local industry suffers. It's a black economy, even if it's an important income for thousands of families also. But the biggest and sort of new problem is a waste problem, because the quality of the clothes is getting worse and worse. So this is a huge problem, in fact. And we found on this market, we found a lot of Western brands with holes and stains and clothes in bad shape that were shipped this far. And the sellers we interviewed told us that they buy these bales for 140 euros, more or less, blindfolded. They don't know what they're buying. They just buy a big bale, and then they sell them more or less. It takes like 2 weeks to sell the whole bale, and the profit is like 15 euros, but the quality is getting worse. So what happens to that? They throw it away. They are dumped in bins or in the gutter. So what did the trackers reveal? That ragged clothes are exported, and exported even to the other side of the world. We are outsourcing our waste problem to developing countries, and the charity turns to global business. There's lots of middlemen in between, and that's one of the problems. That's why the experts nor the charities don't know exactly the final destination. the reactions were with these charities. They were shocked. They were apologizing. One of the charities changed their European partners, for example. But the thing that is interesting for you, of course, are the lessons learned and the methodology. You have to ask yourself what you want to research with the trackers, and do you want to have the exact location? Then these trackers can use GPS, but we wanted to maximize the battery. It was not that important for us to know the exact location, the building where they were. We wanted to maximize the battery. So that's why we used the GMS network. And that way you save battery. So we wanted to maximize that. We did by, you can avoid cold. We used sort of cloth. We would put them inside cloths and sewed them into the pockets, for example, of the jeans. And then you can change the settings so you don't have a signal too often. That way you also save. And other good tricks. Do you want to hide your trackers, or do you want to play with open hands like Jessica did? We wanted to hide them. Think how you would hide them. We were thinking of how would the sorters take the clothes, how would they deal with them? So we wanted to sew them in these places that they wouldn't touch them and find them. And obviously nobody found the trackers, at least in Europe, because they went to Africa and Pakistan. Send a clear message with the tracker. If somebody finds out there's a tracker in the clothes or shoes or something, you can really be sort of shocked. Put a clear message. This is a journalistic project, your email or whatever. Give the project time. We didn't understand that we couldn't sort of imagine that it would take 1 year. So we did two documentaries. The first documentary when the trackers are in Europe, and then we did 1 year later on when we had 2 trackers in Africa and 1 in Pakistan. And follow the device market, talk to wiser colleagues, because these trackers we bought 2 years ago and they're probably maybe better on the market right now. But these were the smallest one we found. These are the documentaries you can find, and I can send you this in the chat also. I think they are in our tip sheet as well, I'm not sure, with English subtitles. So the first one in Europe and the second one is when they are in the final destinations. And these are our online stories that we did. And thank you. I'm not sure, was that 12 minutes or something like that? And I hope it wasn't too fast for the interpreter.
No, you've done well, Mina. Thank you so much. It's such an incredible story, and thanks for sharing all the tips. I just want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. So if you have any questions for Mina or any of the speakers, please leave them on the chat box and we'll take them later on after all the presentations. I've already seen some really interesting questions coming in. We're going to go to a presentation that sort of like is very similar to Mina's, using the same techniques, and also a colleague of yours. Let me introduce Jessica. So Jessica is going to take us through how she used some of the similar techniques that Mina has spoken about to investigate her own story. So Jessica, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, so while Mina has been investigating used garments, my investigation begins even earlier when you start to order clothes online. At least in Finland, you can order several dresses and return those that don't fit, and many stores even encourage you to do it. They want you to turn your home into a fitting room. And I wanted to know that what happens to all the clothes that we return? Are they sold again? And to whom? And what happens to the most ragged clothes? Is it possible that the brand new clothes end up in a landfill somewhere far away, or what happens to them? and how big a problem are the returns? What are the environmental consequences of them? And what is the carbon footprint? So at least in Finland, according to the research that has been done, every third item that we buy online is sent back to the stores. And when it comes to fast fashion, it's even more. For example, Zalando, which is one of the leading companies selling clothes online, says that their customers return 50% of the orders. And at least in Finland, there's a lot of unhealthy behavior among many people. This means that there are customers who orders like 9 pairs of shoes and then they return all the pairs, or they keep only one of them. And then there's like young people or older people as well who are having these clothes parties. They order a lot of clothes and then they try them on, and then they take some nice pictures for social media, and then they send everything back. So this has been a trend which has been seen, at least in Finland. And there has also been research done about that customers have never even thought about what happens to the clothes that we return, or even less about the environmental consequences of all the shipping back and forth. So this is something, this is, for example, something that is not included when you calculate the environmental consequences of the textile industry, which are really big. So the returns are a big part of the transportation costs, but they are not included in this because it's something that we are not very much aware of. So I wanted to find out where the returns end up and what kind of routes they take. So what did we do? We, together with an influencer, she was part of the documentary I did. We bought 5 items from the most popular online clothing stores and sent back each with a tracker. Here you can see us packing the trackers into the packages. And we bought the same trackers as Mina did, but since I knew that the clothes I was looking at would travel fast, I used satellite data from the trackers GPS instead of GSM information. I wanted the trackers to report back to me every hour because I knew that they would be traveling very fast, so that I would know the exact route. So here you can see the clothes that we bought. And then when we have sent them back, we could follow them on our mobile phones. And the app made us a list like this. We could check like the exact location every hour. And we also got this, the app also made this map view. And we could check like the data backwards. So it was very useful. And within a few days, all our clothes had gone to Sweden. And this was interesting, but there was no answer yet to what had happened to the clothes. Were they sold again or were they destroyed? The companies had reassured me that cases where the clothes cannot be sold again are very, very rare, but I wanted to find out. But unfortunately, it seemed that some of the trackers were deactivated. Probably, I don't know if it was by the workers at the warehouses. And also some of the trackers ran out of battery when they had gotten to the warehouse. So, but this was unfortunately the case because I had opted for an open investigation, which meant that the trackers were not hidden into the clothes. Each one of them came with a message as well. I wrote a small message that I wanted the one who finds them to contact me. There was my email address, so they could contact me if they wanted to. And of course, now looking back, it would have maybe been better with smaller trackers with better batteries, so we could have tracked them longer. But we also wanted to avoid violating consumer privacy, so we didn't want to end up tracking a customer if the clothes was sold again. So that was actually not an option for us. But then we got lucky. One of the trackers caught my interest. It had ended up near the Estonian capital, Tallinn. The GPS gave me the exact location of this piece of clothing. It was a pair of jeans. So I traveled to Tallinn, where I found a company who was specialized in return management. This is a growing business in countries like Estonia and Poland. And I found the company unpacking and checking clothes that gets returned, for instance, removing hair and lint, with the aim of getting them in perfect condition so that they can be sold again. And according to the manager who I talked to, he said that many of the clothes have been used before they have been sent back. And you can tell that by the smell or the stains. And you could also see that there were boxes with defective clothes, jeans, that, I don't know, probably not worth fixing or washing. And also what I discovered talking to this lady who is cleaning a dress, who is washing a dress, she told me that if the clothes, if the item is worth less than 60 euros, less than $70 US, they are not worth rescuing. So instead, they are sold or donated to different companies or charity. So these companies or charities then either destroy them or sell them outside Europe. So there's a lot of clothes that never goes back to the shops because they're not worth fixing or washing or. So when I got back from Estonia, I went to one of these charities, the Salvation Army. There's one in Turku, a city in the southwest of Finland. So I went there, and the warehouse was filled with boxes with the returned clothes. And the guy working there told me that they were all on their way to Erbil in northern Iraq. Just some of the many tons of returned clothing shipped out of Europe every year, I guess. But because of the pandemic, I couldn't travel to Iraq. Here you can see, this is one jacket that had been just returned by a customer. And now it was on the way to Iraq. I wanted to travel to Iraq, but I couldn't because of the pandemic. So I got in contact with a cameraman, and he found the clothes that has been shipped from Turku, from Finland, from this place, from the Salvation Army. And this place, they sold the clothes to resellers, local shops. There were one of them called Oslo and another one called Stockholm, because they sell Scandinavian clothes. And at this Oslo, for example, there were clothes that they were sold together with other clothes that had gotten out of season or that were unsold in previous fashion cycles, but they were like new clothes. And on the tags you can read that they come from Finland and from Sweden. The shop owner told us that only some of the clothes that they buy are worth saving. So the most of the clothes, they never even end up in the stores. They end up in a landfill outside Iraq. So this was something that we found out, that like 80% of the clothes that the shops Oslo buys from these ends up in a landfill because they are not worth selling. So what did we find out in this investigation? We published a web story and also a documentary about our findings, which showed how some of the clothes we buy online and send back, even those that might be in perfect condition and unused, risk ending up in a landfill on another continent. We also discovered that no one seems to take responsibility when the clothes travel outside Europe. The clothes travel from middleman to middleman, and no one seems to know the final destination. In fact, for competitive reasons, many companies oblige charities or companies they work with to take the clothes outside their own market. And we also learned a number of things about the trackers, how to use them in a project like this. The main issue was finding trackers small enough, but that still had good quality battery. The trackers that we used weren't optimal, and we couldn't track a specific item all the way to the landfill in Iraq. However, we were able to calculate the carbon footprint of the returns by working with a scientist at the Finnish Environmental Institute. So we could count like the carbon footprints of the returns. And the conclusion was that when you add up all the carbon footprint of all the returns in Europe over 1 year, they are the same as to a major city during the same period of time. But even more troubling is that most of these returns are unnecessary. And if people knew what might happen to them and the environmental cost, they would probably behave quite differently. At least I would think twice before ordering, before using my home as a fitting room to avoid creating more trash on the other side of the world. So this was my investigation.
Thanks, Jessica. And it's such a great parting shot, right? It's just interesting to see both of your story, yours and Mina's, and being on the other side, on the receiving end. I mean, especially Mina's, where a lot of these secondhand clothes do end up in Kenya. We call them mitumba. I think in other parts of Africa, they call them dead man's clothes, white man's clothes, sorry. So it's just very, very interesting. Next, we're going to go to Martin, and we'll listen to how Martin has used tech tools for his investigations. And afterwards, we'll hear from Abu, who's from Bangladesh. In the meantime, please do leave your questions. I'm seeing some people asking some very interesting questions. Leave your questions or comments for any of our speakers, and we'll take them at the tail end of this webinar. Martin, over to you.
Hi there. So my name is Martin Boudot. I'm a French TV investigative reporter. I work for different channels around the world. And my goal today is to show how to investigate on environmental issues with scientists. So this has been the aim of my work since 4 or 5 years now. And I'm going to try to give you a few tips to maybe start investigating with scientists on environmental issues. So let's start first. So yeah, the name of the series is Green Warriors. The name of today is how to work with scientists on environmental investigation. Green Warriors, just to do a quick recap, it's a 6 parts, 52 minutes documentary series of scientific investigation on environmental issues. We are producing 3 more documentaries, so there will be 9 documentaries at the end of the year, 2022. We investigated on the uranium pollution in Niger and France as well, on the fertilizers in Morocco and France as well. We investigated on the coal pollution in Poland and in France as well. We also investigated on Indonesia about the world's most polluted river. So yeah, this is just to show you there's a real interest from the public for our series, which means that there's a real interest for the public to have some scientific investigation as well. Our series is broadcast in more than 20 countries. You can see a few of them here: France Télévisions in France, Al Jazeera, Deutsche Welle, the Croatian TV, and Prime Video, Amazon Prime. Also in some places in the world, there's more than 20 million viewers for the series as well, for each episode. It's translated in English, Spanish, German, and Arabic. And we received 11 awards and had 26 selections in different festivals. So yeah, let's go to it now. That was the introduction part. First, I wanted to guide you to the different domains, to the different academic, which makes sense for an investigative reporter. So there are a few specialization of scientists, which could be very interesting for us when it comes to environmental issues. So the first one is a biologist, of course. You can look for biologists in your own country. Most of the time, they work very, very well on the nature and the environmental issues. Of course, sorry about the email. Let me put the email away. This is live session. We also have a chemist. Of course, the chemist scientists are very, very important for us, because we are covering a lot of pollutions regarding to the chemistry. One of the most important one is the toxicologists. Try to work with toxicologists. They are really an important part of the work when it comes to investigate on environmental and health issues, because they know the substances, they know how it works, and they know how it affects the humans. So that makes a lot of sense. Environmental epidemiologists, of course, they are like the grail, they're going to be the person the scientists who are going to be able to give you a very thorough look on a particular pollution, because they have so much data. It's very important to also have them on board. Genotoxicologists, of course, if you're looking into genotoxicity. The doctors in pharmacology as well, it could be something quite interesting, because pharmacology is most of the time, these guys know the medicines, they know the drugs, but also they know the pollutants. So they can be also very important, and most of the time we underestimate their work. And of course, all the academics working on all the teachers, the PhD and everything that are still working for the university. They are sometimes, and most of the time, very good person to talk to when it comes to investigate with scientists. So let me tell you about the plus and also the obstacles when it comes to creating data with scientists. I think what's really important is that when you create data, you really are at the core of the fact, and then you're going to be way better for your investigation than just opinion, just saying. You're not just only going to see the industrial, the lobby or whatever, the company, the multinationals, and versus the activist. You are somehow in the middle with scientific data. So I think it's very important, because you have basically what's the closest to a fact, and trying to create data, scientific data, is something that is really means a lot for an investigative reporter working on environmental and health issues. It's a win-win situation. It's a win situation for you as an investigative reporter, but it also is a win situation for the scientists, because these guys don't have the budget or the possibility to take some samples abroad in some other countries, to have let's say a population from Poland and in France as well, when you're a scientist from France or from Belgium. So you give them also a human resource that they don't necessarily have. You can find some citizen, you can convince them maybe easily, and so it's very a win-win situation at the end. And you can reach a broader audience. You're just not going to talk to the people that are already on your side, like let's say on the side of the environmental, not activism, but environmental aware. But you're going to talk to a lot of more people, like people that just are listening to you because there's a scientific point of view now. They're just not that into environmental issues, but they're going to listen at you, and you're going to talk to a broader audience. At least it's something I've really witnessed over the years with the Green Wire series. Of course, there are a lot of obstacles. One of them is, of course, the budgets. Most of the time, our expenses for scientific studies for each documentary is between 5,000 and 10,000 euros. So that would be $12,000 as well. So it can be something quite expensive. You can find some different way to try to tackle this obstacle of budget, trying to fundraising or associating with organizations, something like that. Even with the academics, it works a lot. Another main obstacle is that journalism time frame is very different from the science time frame. Most of the time, we take like 2 or 3 months maximum to work on a particular piece, and the science they take rarely less than a year. So you have to be aware of that. I'm lucky enough to have 3 documentaries producing at the same time, so it gives me like a year to work on the 3 documentaries and to try to really investigate with scientists for a year on each documentary. But I'm lucky enough to have this window of opportunity. I know it's not the same thing for most of us, so keep that in mind before you're being frustrated. Of course, there are some ethic concerns. You have to have the authorization from the people, the citizen, as well, sometimes from the ethical committee of the university, of the laboratory. So make sure to have all the green lights when it comes to investigating with scientists. And there's, of course, this issue of conflict of interest. Some laboratory work with the main lobbies, the main companies, and they will tell you sometimes that they cannot help you, but sometimes they will help you, but you realize later that they actually are in a conflict of interest position because they work so much with the industrial part, or sometimes with the organization, the NGOs part. So you have to be aware of the conflict of interest and look for the conflict of interest of the lab or of the scientists working with you. So yeah, the process of how we work when it comes to investigate with scientists on environmental and health issues, basically we're going to look for the scientific papers all around, what has been published, what's the state of science regarding a precise topic, whether it's pesticides and genotoxicity, whether it's the coal and air pollution. Just look for scientific papers, and then trying to find the appropriate lab and the appropriate scientist, which going to take a lot of time. It's what takes us the most time. It's this. So then you find agreement with them, and then you're going to find a citizen that are going to be helpful for you on the ground, whether they're going to participate at some point in the study because of you're going to sample them some blood, some urine, some hair, or whatever, or they can show you some places like environmental places, wastewater. They can show you where the kidneys are, where the pollution is, basically. So that's quite important. Then the sampling part will come. We will talk about that after. The analysis, of course, and then the interpretation by the laboratory or the doctors or the scientists you've been working with. And then you're going to inform the public, forwarding your results to the public you've been working with at the beginning, the citizen. Then comes the time of confrontation with whether the political responsible or the lobbies or the companies that are responsible for the pollution. And with your analysis, you can actually have some good data to confront. And then at the end come the impact of your investigation. I will talk about that right after that. There's a little slight issues of that. Why is that? Yeah. Finding the appropriate lab and scientists. Sorry, there was an issue. It's the critical part. You're going to take a lot of time to find the appropriate lab and guy who's going to work with you. The scientist has to be credible, of course, and the scientific team as well. You don't want to go for a goofy scientist pretending that he's going to revolutionize the world and he's just making some advertisement on Facebook only. You have to look for legit people. They're going to give you some precious advices about how to sample, how the pollutants work and everything. So really look for the perfect catch. And they're going, of course, to help you along the investigation because the investigation sometimes takes you in some places, and you're going to look for enlightenment from the scientific part. Here is an example of a sampling process we took in Morocco. It's about, let me put the sound down because it's in French. So it's me filming with the drone. You can see wastewater here. You cannot see it very well, actually. It's wastewater from a fertilizers industry. This is me. So I'm going to go forward. Yeah, we don't have the right to be there. Here is the wastewater of this fertilizers industry. And we were looking for heavy metal cadmium. And as you can see, this is the most basic sampling method. So basically just, plastic kind of a bottle. Yeah, we were coughing because the smell was horrendous. It's just, sampling some wastewater from the company, which is like a few miles away, to look for the pollutants that we think are used by the company. It's just, the most basic way. Another possibility is to sample this kind of mussels around the wastewater. As you can see, I'm taking them because the mussel, for instance, they are really good indicators of the heavy metal pollutions. And off we go because we don't have the right to be there. We will look. We're searched by the police and everything. If you want to look for some other, just look at green wires on the internet. I'm sure you find some interesting information. Can I put the other one? What is that looking? Yeah, this is another example of a sampling. It's more elaborate. This is a machine that was that we borrowed to a scientist we have worked with for a year. It's a machine that can analyze the air next to the cold pollution around Poland. So here is the scientist explaining us how the machine works. So our way of filming it is to be totally transparent. So I'm just the handling guy, on the field, and the scientists are on the lab, and they are giving me advices to go at the good and the good places. So here I am sampling in a Polish city, in the schools as well, trying to analyze the number of particles in Poland to see whether the air is damaged, polluted, and everything. It's a citizen. Mother was very angry about the pollution. So yeah, that's one was an example. And the sampling are so important. I'm going to show you a third part, which is a urine sampling. It's also about these fertilizers. We have realized that there was a lot of heavy metal in the fertilizers, and we found them in our urines in France. So as you can see, we are, yeah, that's a very important part. They are signing an ethical concern and also some questions about their way of living, their habits, because you want to be as precise as possible, and we for example, this little questionnaire, this question marks we gave them was created with the scientists to have the best levels and the best analysis possible. So make sure to always look for the best precise information when you're doing samples of people. No, yeah, we saw you before. And a last one, last sampling part. We collaborated in Paraguay with a team that was doing some DNA. We actually worked with them to find some citizen, a laboratory from Paraguay, to look at the DNA damages in blood of the children living close to the soy fields down in Paraguay, and we compared them to the children living not close and living to the only organic places of Paraguay, and we found some very disturbing differences between the DNA damages of these two populations. So there was a blood sample. This is very important. This is the critical part, the sampling. You really need to have the best advices from the scientists to get that. Next slide. What is it? Yeah. So this method of bringing science into environmental investigation can be really useful in terms of impact. In France, we had, after our documentary, a new law that was voted regarding the levels of heavy metals in the phosphate fertilizers. There were some protests in Morocco against the water pollution caused by the phosphate industry. Regarding the uranium, there was also a new committee of vigilante citizens that were monitoring radioactive radiation around the uranium plants after the broadcast of our documentary. Some of our scientific data were used in a lawsuit in Niger against uranium company, especially the hair levels we did. A new wastewater regulation for the textile industry was passed in Indonesia after our investigation in collaboration with scientists regarding the textile industry in Indonesia. The Polish government promised to phase out coal during our investigation when we confronted them with the result of the air and the urine samples from the kids from France, the comparison between the French kids and the Polish kids when it comes to the markers of air pollution. There was many different impacts. Actually, the Polish case is a quite interesting impact to look at. This is, for example, the scientist that has worked with us on this brand new scientific study in Poland and in France to compare the amounts of pollution in the urine of the kids from France and in Poland. And as you can see, this is the mother of one of the Polish kids. And basically, yeah, that was all over the news. Our studies was quoted by the main media. As you can see, I don't read Polish. You probably don't either, except if there are some Polish guys around. But yes, it was all over the news for a couple of days because our study was so shockful. As you can see, the scientists on the right, the mother on the left. And look at that. At the end, yeah, the mother that was part of our documentary, she finally got the attention of the national media, thanks to the fight she was doing. And that was, yeah, of course, the newspaper. We had, you can see me at the very left. We don't really care about that, but just for you to understand, this is the scientists from other countries talking about our study. Yeah, and that's one of the shot we've done. This is the coal industry right there. So yeah, that was for you to understand a little bit more. If you look for resources, if you want to do the investigation with scientists on environmental or health issues, there are of course Sci-Hub, the free website. You have the scientific papers around the world, Science Direct. There's a lot of different websites you look for scientific studies, scientific papers for you to understand. And if you want to look for Google Scholar, that would be interesting. Don't forget the website of the local universities. Sorry about this type issue. Website of the local university, National Health and Environmental Agency, public and private hospital, public and private laboratories as well. Don't forget the NGOs using scientific method. There's a very interesting one, which is called Source International. It's a very interesting NGO. Look for their method. They really partner with scientists to try to investigate and try to shift the lines when it comes to pollution, especially lead pollution in different countries. There's another in France, which is called Génération Future. They're doing some very high studies in France, and most of the time they're using this method. Yeah, that was it for today. Thanks for your attention. My name is Martin Boudot. If you do have some questions, my email is right there. And if you don't, well, I hope this was useful, and I hope you have a good day and enjoy the Global Investigative Journalism Conference. Take care.
Thank you, Martin. Brilliant presentation there. We were expecting Abu Siddiq from Bangladesh on the next presentation. Unfortunately, he's having some connection issues, though we'll try to squeeze in his presentation if he makes it back. There's been some incredible just banter happening on the chat box and really great questions coming in. I hope Martin will also join the chat so that he can take some questions directed to him. But I want to start with you, Mina. A couple of questions for both you and Jessica. The first one, Mina, I'll actually combine two questions. One is from Sedar, who asks, how many trackers did you use in total? And perhaps while you're answering that, you could also take Eric's question. And Eric asks, what's a reasonable budget for a GPS tracker for an investigation like what you did? Mina?
We used 6 trackers, and because we wanted to have as global roaming as possible, so the cost was more or less 100 euros per tracker.
So 6 trackers, 100 euros per tracker. And there's a question for you, Jessica. I'm assuming this one is more for your story. This is from Naima. Naima wants to know, was there any indication of an increase or a decrease in returns during the pandemic due to an increased, I guess, cloth returns ending up in landfills? Jessica?
Yes, what I understood, there was an increase in people shopping online. And that, of course, led also to an increase in the returns. That's what we could see.
Was it attributed to the pandemic, would you say?
During the pandemic, yes.
Yes.
I mean, people were shopping more online,
right,
and also returning more. So there was an increase in this when it comes to clothes.
With the second-hand clothes, there were months that, for example, African countries stopped the import of second-hand clothes, so there was sort of a stop there, but then they started again.
Right. Did that impact your investigation, Mina?
I'm not sure if that's one of the reasons that the trackers took so long time. I can't know. It can be one of the reasons that it took half a year to go to Kenya and Nigeria, and then to Pakistan 1 year. So it could be one of the explanations, and that's one of the reasons we didn't go to Africa. We used Yle's correspondent in Africa and who went to Mozambique.
Right. And there's a question for you, Mina, as well, from Nicolia, who asks, what did the Salvation Army and the other charities say when you showed them your stories?
The Salvation Army was Jessica, but the other charities in Finland were shocked. They apologized. One of the biggest one who didn't give interview wrote email and said that this is a human mistake. This shouldn't be happening. And then they for example stopped working with some of the European partners. They sort of looked through them and saw that some of these garments had gone through them to Africa, even if they had claimed and promised that their clothes wouldn't go to Africa. And I forgot to say that all our clothes were in bad shape. They had holes, they had stains, the zipper was broken. So those were clothes that shouldn't be traveling around the world.
Yeah, and I remember when I was watching a documentary, particularly the UFF, that charity, they were very categorical that these do not end up outside of the EU zone. What was their reaction specifically?
They were saying that it was a human mistake. They wouldn't. It's a very closed charity. It's a very strange. It's global and its origins in Denmark, but they said that this is a human mistake. The other ones, FIDA, they were much more sort of modest and asked for apology and changed their sort of policy.
Right. And Jessica, what about the Salvation Army in your story? What did they say?
Yeah, the Salvation Army was not happy when I revealed that some of the clothes ended up in landfill, and actually a very big part of them. So they told me that they were now gonna work with the clothing companies so that the clothing companies are not obliging them to take the clothes outside Europe. And they said that they have already started the negotiations, that they don't want to take them that far, because it means that you don't really know what's going to happen to them. There's too many middlemen. But I don't know, I haven't followed it up. That did they really do something with it? Like, did they have new agreements done? Or so it's something that I'm thinking about following up.
Okay, yeah, that would be
but
brilliant.
I think that was very interesting, Jessica, in your investigation, that the brands don't want to sell those clothes in Europe. They want to export them outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they are not very open about it. They don't want to admit it. But then there was an agreement with the Salvation Army that they could have the clothes, but they were obliged to take them outside Europe. So yeah, that was very interesting. And I found it out. I found out that very, very late in my investigation. I was already editing. Otherwise, I would have tried to follow it up a little bit more. But I'm thinking about, maybe sometimes, continue with that.
Yeah, a follow-up would be really interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to Martin. Martin, there's someone clapping for you. A very good presentation there. And there's a question for you from Marthe Rubio, who asks, did you receive some scientific training? And also, have you felt some distrust from the scientific world towards journalists? Martin?
Yes, I'm not sure you can hear me well. So sorry. I'm moving a little bit around France right now, so I'm very sorry about that. Yeah. So yes, I did receive some. At first, it was hard to work with scientists because they, as I often say, they feel like we're not on the same time frame, so it's hard to work with them. It needed time and trust. And what was the first part of the question again? I'm so sorry.
She asks, did you receive some scientific training?
Yeah, I did, and I was lucky enough as well to receive some kind of informal scientific study and training by the scientists I've been working with in the last 11 years now. It's also how it works. You don't have to be a scientific yourself or have to be a scientist yourself. I don't define myself as a scientist journalist. I define myself as an investigative journalist, and I'm lucky enough to have time to talk in depth with scientists, so they can teach me and learn, and so I can avoid to do any mistakes. Yeah, that's.
And Martin, also there's another question, I guess related to what you've said, from the same person who asks, don't you have the obligation to be with a scientist to do the field sample tests? And also, is your name appearing anywhere in any scientific paper at the end of your investigations?
Sometimes, actually, I am with a scientist on the field. There are, I show some extracts of my documentaries, which I'm the only one, but sometimes I am. Actually, I was filming today with a scientist in the north of France regarding heavy metals, but I don't have to as soon, because most of the time where we go, we don't have the right to be there. The countries did not allow us to be here, so it's very hard to implicate scientists with us. My role is just to basically what we call in France a laborantin, basically someone that will manipulate, just doing the samples, following the guideline very precisely of the scientific team, and just bringing them back the samples so we can work together. It's quite of a hybrid, mixed situation, but it really works. And yes, my name appears sometimes in the thank you, sections, or sometimes in a just. They're actually providing all the details about how the collaboration worked, but being in the thank you section is way than enough for me.
Yeah, at least you end up in a scientific paper, right? So
absolutely, absolutely, so great.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, and we know you're in transit, so thank you for even being able to join the chat. I'm going to take another question from Naima, and this is to Jessica and Mina. I think could be more for Mina. And Naima asks, given that there was a lag in shipping due to travel restrictions, did the returned clothes, to Jessica actually, then end up in landfills in Europe, or were alternative solutions found now that those garments couldn't be shipped to the third world? So because there were travel restrictions, did the returned clothes then end up in landfills in Europe, or were alternative solutions found now that those garments couldn't be shipped to the third world?
The clothes I was investigating, they were shipped to Iraq, even if there was the pandemic, so there was no restrictions. So I can't say anything about that, maybe, but I have no knowledge about it. But at least the ones that I investigated, the ones from the Salvation Army to Iraq, and also in Iraq, in Erbil, they got a lot of clothes all the time coming in.
Okay.
So maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
Yes, that's what they told me, but not that much.
All right. Thank you. I think I've taken everyone's question. If you have one last question, I'm going to give you like a minute or two to just type it on the chat box. Mina, I have a question for you. And perhaps maybe, I don't know if you have a tracker that you can show us. I think it would be just interesting to see the size and everything. And perhaps both you and Jessica could share with us possible story ideas. I mean, both your ideas centered around clothes, right? Tracking clothes. What else can we use these trackers for? What type of story ideas can we think of if we have access to the trackers that you do?
Okay, the first question was a tracker. I don't have a tracker here, but the size is more or less like this. You saw the picture in my presentation. It fits exactly into the small pocket in the jeans. So that's it's not that small. I would have liked to have smaller. But I can show you the application from my phone. Looks like this. It's really easy to use. There we have our 6 garments still. And that's, for example, the green sweater. Let's see. That was it in Kenya, Nigeria? I can't see now. But this is sort of the scope, and then you can zoom it out and in. So that's the application. Your other question was other projects. So some colleagues have they have followed plastic waste. Then there are people, journalists have done, Norwegians, for example, have tracked electronic waste to Africa also. I know German colleagues have tracked, and Jessica's colleagues have tracked robbed bicycles, right? That's another story. What else? Can you remember, Jessica?
Yes, no. I mean, yes, we tracked the bicycles that has been stolen, and we had an idea about tracking care workers who visit elderly, in order to know, because they are often overworked. So we wanted, and have very small wages, and they have too many visits per day. So they can stay only for a very short time with each elderly. So that's something that we, at least, I don't know if yes, that's something that we have been planning. So we wanted to know for how long they stay by each elder and how stressful their days are moving around in the cities. And for this, we thought that, these trackers would be perfect. So we have had these ideas, but not yet.
Then I know our Swedish broadcasting company, they were inspired by our investigation, and they tracked also secondhand clothes, but that were robbed from the containers. And then they did this investigation and tracked the criminal gangs in the Baltic countries. So that was an interesting story.
Wow.
Yes. And a long time ago, there was this activist who in St. Petersburg, they conducted an interesting investigation where they dropped small waterproof GPS trackers down the toilet. And because they wanted to know where they go. And it seemed that they went into open air waterways without going through the sewage filtration. So that was very interesting.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's some years
I
ago.
really like the idea of putting the trackers on people, because there's so many stories you can tell, like with the health workers. I mean, in this part of the world, you have community health workers in Kenya, for instance. So it would be interesting to track them, and they don't get paid, they're volunteers, just to see how much work, the workload, and how stressful their days are. So that brilliant ideas. We do have 2 questions that have come in. Elizabeth asks, would the trackers work in very cold weather? The question from Canada, which is about to get rather cold in the coming weeks. I think Elizabeth's story idea just popped up for her. And Eric also asks, is the app specific to the tracker? So Jessica and Mina, both of you can take that.
About the cold, yes, they are quite, I tried the cold because it was really cold last winter. No, 2 years ago, we put out in December, and it was like 20- degrees in January in Finland, and we put them in the containers. We didn't even think about the cold. So yes, they did well, but then we noticed that, and we heard afterwards that cold might sort of, it's not good for the battery if you want to have a long lasting battery. So we sewed them into cloth and put them into the garments. But yes, I mean, it was really cold when we did this project. So Canada would be okay. If it works in Finland, it would work in Canada.
And what about the app? Maybe Jessica, you can take that. Is the app specific to the tracker?
You're muted.
Yes,
You're muted.
Yes. It comes with a tracker, so it's very, very easy to use. You have it like, we had it like several from the, like of my colleagues were also following it, and the influencer we were following at the same time, everybody.
And I think Eric is asking, is it specific? So do you need a specific tracker with a specific app, or can you use the same app for different trackers?
No, this is the application that comes with this tracker. So you buy the tracker, and then you connect it to your mobile phone. And I suppose all trackers are a bit different, but this worked like this.
Okay, and maybe finally, because I'm seeing the chat, all the questions are answered. How much time should you give such investigations? Because if you're talking about 1 year, I mean, at what point do you say, I'm really tired of following that sweater across the globe? You know, how much time, how patient should you be with such investigations?
Well, we went patient enough, because we did the first documentary. We thought, okay, now they're in Europe, let's do a documentary. But I think it was a mistake. Or you can, of course, you can do several stories. And so I did other stories in between. It's easy. This is an easy project that you can follow and do some other stuff in between. You don't have to watch all the time your mobile phone. But it's really it's fun. I was looking at other Christmas, you know, following the six garments, and my family was like, can you put away that telephone, please? No, look, no, it's here. Now it's in the harbor. It's really a fun project, because and it's a good alternative. And after all I do lots of document-based documentaries and stories also. So this is a good storytelling story. But you can do other stuff in between.
Guys, last minute and I have to ask your questions, but I'm going to ask all the ones that I have. I'm having a field day with this, but I'm curious. You said that Mina, you hid the trackers, and Jessica chose to put them in places where they could be found. I'm just curious what the reasoning. I understand the hiding. Jessica, why did you keep them in an open? Like, why did you want them to be discoverable? You're mute, Jessica.
I just muted myself. I was going to unmute. Yes, I thought, I don't know. I mean, I could have done it the other way as well, but I thought that I didn't want the tracker to end up with, you know, a customer, somebody who bought the clothes, if they were going to being sold again. So that's why I thought that I should do it this way. It could have been maybe done the other way as well. And I was also, I mean, the clothes that I returned were all in perfect condition, but I could have, of course, tried them on and, you know, used some perfume and maybe a stain or something to see, but I didn't do that this time. So, I mean, but it could have been done. So, yeah.
Okay. I like how you said this time. I like how you said this time, because now we see what you're thinking of. But Mina, yours, you left sort of like this note, like you left a note just in case like someone bought the clothes and found, you left a message. I'm curious, did anyone, you know, did you hear from anyone? Was anyone curious?
No, and I think that's another sort of lesson I learned, that maybe I should have written even sort of clearer message that I'm a journalist, this is a project, please contact me. No, nobody contacted, we just put it on the tracker. But the way, I mean, I understand exactly Jessica, that she wanted to have it open because we don't want to spy on people. That's unethical. We solved that by using bad quality clothes that wouldn't be sold, at least in Finland. And they probably, I'm sure they found the trackers when they came to Nigeria and Kenya and Pakistan. At least nobody contacted. It would have been really interesting to have a contact, but
yeah, I got contacted. I had a message, and there were different, like the brands contacted me. I was hoping maybe that the workers at the warehouse would contact me and tell me about the horrible working conditions or something, but it was the brand who contacted me. And it was actually quite good as well, because I had been trying to get the information from them that what happens to the return clothes, and they were not very willing to tell me. But after this, I started a communication with them and I found out a lot more. So it was useful to have the message.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for taking all the questions, ladies. I'm going to end the Q&A there. In case you have any questions for either Mina, Jessica, or the gentlemen, Martin and Abu, please, you can find their contacts on Pathable, and you can email them. Also, you can learn more about their stories. The links have been posted on the chat box. If you want more tips, each speaker has provided a tip sheet for further investigations and more stuff that you can learn, or more lessons that you can learn from the investigations. I want to thank everyone who took the time. I know it's towards the end of the day for all of us. Thank you for joining in from wherever you joined us. It is the tail end of GIJN this year. However, there's still other sessions, so please, stay tuned. This has been really brilliant. Thank you to the GIJN team, and thank you to you, Mina, Jessica, Martin, and Abu, who unfortunately was not able to join us, but you can find his tip sheet on the GIJN website. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. This has been a testing and tracking session, and see you next time, I guess. Bye.
Thank you for your interest. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.